The reforms from P.W. Botha can never really liberate us, because in any case, apartheid is a crime. It is an evil thing. How can you reform an evil thing? Apartheid, according to the late chairman of the PEC, John Nyati Pokela, cannot be reformed. It must be totally destroyed. Armed struggle, in our view, which is not to be carried out by one or two isolated trained guerrillas, but is to be carried out by the masses as a whole, it's only starting. The Pan-Africanist Congress believes in change that will come from the oppressed people themselves, because they are their own liberators. And the duty of the Pan-Africanist Congress is to increase the fighting capacity of our masses. That is our task. We will have liberation at a time determined by the strength of our people. The 1980s are the decade of the Azanian Revolution. We have said in 1959, and we say so today, that South Africa, or occupied Azania, is not an island, and it cannot solve its own problems in a manner in which is not related to the general trend in Africa. The general trend in Africa has been that white domination has been overthrown. There is self-determination by the African people. In our country, we are fighting for self-determination, and the Azanian masses are the instrument of change. We are confident of victory. It is not a question of whether we will win. The question is when we shall win. We are going to establish a new social order whose content is socialism, whose form is democratic, whose character is non-racial. And we say this is a society that will cater for the material and spiritual needs of the individual. And we go on to say, in that society, we will accept, as Africans, anyone who pays his one and only loyalty to Africa, and who accepts the democratic rule of the African majority. That is the vision of the social order which the Pan-Africanist Congress wishes to establish. You are part of humanity, and the apartheid regime is therefore committing a crime against each and every one of you. You have, each one of you, a duty to fight against this crime.
Today that we meet as the African masses to hear.
Sibulela kakhulu ku Mr. Masemola, sibulela kakhulu na ku lamadoda ahamba nawo.
We are more grateful to meet Mr. Masemola and the man with him as the people in Port Elizabeth.
Xa ndithi ukunihlasela nje kancinci abantu bakwethu. Umr. Masemola lona umbonayo ndiyacinga maphofu inokuba mhlawumbi senimazisiwe ngomnye wamalungu ethu akandlunkulu.
Just as a matter of introduction, to introduce Mr. Masemola, whom I think most of you know him through the media. Mr. Masemola is a member of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Tanzania and is one of the men who's occupying a position in the National Executive.
Ya namhlanje ke usazu sihlinzela ke impuku nathi bantu bakwethu.
He has just come to share some.
One settler. You say it as if you believe it about One settler? Say it as if you believe it 60%. One settler? Africa! Comrades, noble sons of Africa, noble daughters of Africa, we almost didn't come because of a number of people in Johannesburg which were discouraging us. They were saying, you know, that Port Elizabeth is not a stronghold of the Pan-Africanists. If you get 100 people, you must know it is successful. But we were saying that wherever Africa's sons and Africa's daughters are, there we have to be. And even if there are only 100 people, we shall go there. So we are glad to be with you today.
Thank you. Yeah, ubabe nisazi bonyana besizwe. Uba phambi koba sibe siyeza apha kuye kwakho amahumhum okuba hayi le ndawo nithi niyakuyo phaya kwiMpuma Koloni loo ndawo leyo anazona owaziwa kuyo nawube nenza impazamo uba niyakhona kodwa thina elethu singonyana besizwe abazimisele ukuthi sikhulule umnyana wesizwe noba mnye kuloo ndawo akuyo sathi kuyo yonke apha indawo eAzania sakuya singajonganga into yoba sinabalandeli okanye sinabalandeli koko sijonge into yoba ingcinezelo nalapho ikhona.
I see from T-shirts and caps that people here are from different political organizations. I see some people from other organizations. And I think I should maybe just say one little word about unity. What is important for us on the question of unity, there's a lot of talk, particularly from the imperialists in the West, about unity between the worker and the capitalist, between the oppressor and the oppressed. There is no such thing as unity on that level. What we are talking about is only the unity amongst those people who are struggling against the oppressor. Peace amongst the Africans.
Novuyo ukuba apha njengoba ndijongile njena ndibona izinxibo ezinxityweyo ezibonisa into abantu bakwi-organization ngee-organizations kodwa loo nto leyo ibazise apha and kunento esokuthethwa xa ndinothi ndithi gqaba kancinci indaba yokumanyana ndifumanise ngakumbi ukusuka ngapha kwelasentshona oongxowankulu ufumanise uba bathetha ngomanyano lwabacinezelweyo bemanywa nabacinezeli bethetha ngomanyano labaxuthelweyo bemanyana nabaxuthi thina xa sithetha ngomanyano asithethi ngaloo nto sithetha ngomanyano lwabo baphantsi kwenzingo benyamanyana bejonge ukuzikhulula basuse ezo nzingo uthetha ukuthi besilwa nabenzi nzingo ezo.
Peace among the Africans. War against the enemy. I also want to say something on behalf of the President of the Pan-Africanist Congress, Uncle Zef Motopeng. We have received a lot of messages since the time he was released of people who were writing from all over the country to wish him well. He is much better, but I think that the problem is that although he sometimes is not well, he just get up and go and do work. I remember when I was with him in London, there were some mass meetings waiting for him in the United States, and they had to discharge him from hospital so that we can go to the United States and address the sons and daughters of Africa who are scattered abroad out of the motherland.
Uba ndingakhe ndithi nje uthetha kancinci ngenkokeli yethu uZefania Motopeng inkokeli ethe oko yaphuma kusoko kuxabalathelana iincwadi ezimbulelayo ngokunyaniseka kwakhe edabini zimnqwenelela nempumelelo kodwa uyinkokeli apha ethi ngamanye amaxesha ivuke iye emsebenzini benze lo msebenzana kodwa ubone ukuthi noko impilo ayihlanga ndikhumbula ngeimini sikunye ngaphaya kwelaseLondon apho bekubakho amaxesha kufuneka elindiwe imini yonke angakwazi ukuphumelela ngenxa yempilo xa eyothetha noonyana besizwe abathi bantlokothiswa badudulwa basiwa kwezi zizwe zingezizwe ngaphesheya kongqowankulu.
And it's again on account of him not being well. Yesterday he was not well at all, but he went to address a meeting of workers which asked him to come and speak about negotiations and what is the interest of the working class and how is this affected by all the talks about negotiations. And he got up out of a bed, he was not well, but he went there and the comrades just stepped in yesterday and said, no, Uncle Zef, we can see you are not well. We will not allow you to travel to Port Elizabeth, you are definitely not well. But Comrade Masemola was able to stand in short notice in for Comrade Motopeng in order to be here with us today.
Izolo ebeye wathi wamenywa umbutho wabasebenzi uba akhe athi ukuthetha malunga noluthethwathethwano athethe abonise imfuno zabasebenzi into uba zikhathaleleke kangakanani na kuloo nto. Kodwa ke uthe emva kuba ebuye apho omnye wabahlangani onyana besizwe bambona uba noko akanawulunga ukuthi aphumelele apha babe naye secela ke umnumzana uMasemola unyana wesizwe enye inkokheli ze-Pan Africanist Congress of Azania.
What I'm going to do is just to give you a few words about negotiations that is being talked of such a lot, and then I'll just say a few words about the Pan-Africanist movement, and then I will, so that the rest of the other items I will leave over to Comrade Masemola, who will be dealing with a number of issues with us today. Today we hear a lot of talk about preconditions for negotiations. Some people are saying, release all from prison, unban the PAC, the ANC, BCMA, SACP, let them all come home. Troops out of the township. Lifting restrictions, lift the state of emergency, do all those things. Once you've done that, we will consider to negotiate with you. Agenda for the meeting.
Kodwa kubo bonke abantu akakho okhe abhekise athethe ngondoqo.
What is it that you negotiate about? We as Pan-Africanists are saying very clearly for all who care to hear, who care to listen to hear, that in 1959 we had no state of emergency, we had no exiles, we had no leaders in prison, we had no troops in our townships, but we were oppressed. All those things can go, we'll still be oppressed. And when apartheid came, they came with mixed marriages that they stopped. They came with many apartheid laws from 1948. But they were oppressing us before 1948. They were oppressing us from 1652. So if they scrap apartheid, they oppress us the way they were oppressing us before 1948. That's all. You know, a magician, he tricks you with a sleight of hand very fast before you realize you've been tricked. These people can remove apartheid because they were oppressed before apartheid came in 1948. Just like that, they remove apartheid and say, now you are no longer oppressed, and then you can believe them. No, we'll still be oppressed even without apartheid. We must be very clear what it is that we are fighting for in this country. Apartheid and all these things, and some people might find very strange to be in a political meeting where nothing is spoken about. Let them love this, let them do that, and all these things. You might find it strange, but you must not find it strange because you are now in a meeting of the Pan-Africanists and people are very clear of what they want and what they're talking about. Is the question We don't like to use the word whites and all these colors here. We are not racist. We talk about the European settlers. When the European settlers had to get our people to work for them and our people refused. You remember in Johannesburg they brought in slaves from China to come and work on the mines. They brought slaves from India to come and work on the plantations in Natal because our people didn't want to work for them. And what they did to force people to be exploited, they brought tax. So it was, they passed a law, they made it against the law to refuse to be exploited, to refuse to work. But still our people said, no, I still have a little bit of land here, so I can go to jail, I serve my sentence, and then I come out and I still don't work for them, because I have my land here. But he told the state prosecutor, he says, you know what, you can't force these people to work. What you must do, what you must do, you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. But what you can do, you can make a horse thirsty before you take him to the water, and then he will drink willingly. So in that regard, what you do, he won't work for you because he still has land. Take away his land, he'll be hungry. You'll see him even bribing the Nduna to come in there so that you can exploit him. He'll even stand in queues outside the factory on Monday mornings, every morning, in order to get in there so that you can exploit him. Just take away every land they have. You'll get them where you want. You are making him thirsty, you come on his own.
Omnye wonyana besizwe owayelwisana mpela nalomcimbi wokutyiwa kokubila kwakhe waye akafuna mpela wathathwa ke bacaba uyamangalela. Uthe xa ephaya enkantolo wathi hayi ndingandigweba loo minyaka nindigweba yona, kodwa mna into endawuyenza kuba ndisebenze nzima loo minyaka nindike yona. Uphuma kwam ndawuphuma ndiphindele kulaa mhlatyana wam, andiwusebenzela nina. Yathi ke lo mtho ungumgwebi wathi hayi ndiyayazi into ezayenza, into ezasuka siyenze noba unothatha ihashe uliseze amanzi, anothatha usemlanjeni uliseze amanzi ngenkani, kodwa into ezayenza apha kuyinye into yokuba ndithathe wena lo ndikwenze ulambe kuqala, yenze ukuba uzawuzizela kum. Indlela yokuba ke ndikwenze ulambe uba ndikuxuthele lo mhlaba usathetha ngawo ngoku.
The second item that we are prepared to look into as Afrikaners is the issue of democracy. One person, one vote in a unit to take place here. Really, will the Pan-Africanists get it right? Will they be able to put the struggle on the right course in this country? Will they really be able to stop the government, the superpowers, everybody who want to sell out? Will Pan-Africanists get it right? Are they strong enough? Give you a key to understanding what is happening in the country today. In closing, the characteristics of this country today is banning of organizations, restricting of individuals, hanging of our people, exile, telling our people, making our people run into exile, and all these things are the characteristics of what is happening in the country today, and each one of those characteristics flows from the program of action of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Tanzania. In 1960, to try and stop the Pan-Africanist Congress and the campaign, the anti-pass campaign. Restrictions came onto the statute book through the Sobukwe clause, when the government came up with special clauses to restrict Sobukwe and all other political prisoners that will follow him. The question of political exiles, the question of restrictions, all these characteristics that is currently happening here arise on the political agenda as a response by the government to the program of action of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Tanzania. Arises on the political agenda through the Pan-Africanist Congress. When they killed the PAC members at Sharpeville, not only did a large number of our people die, but non-violence as a method of struggle also died in Sharpeville in 1960. With its own national political program of action for liberation. Some people say, where do the Pan-Africanists differ with some other liberation movements on the question of the strategy to be used in the struggle? The strategy that must be used to attain liberation. Before you can have a strategy for liberation, you must have one thing. You must ask yourself, who is the vehicle that must bring about change in this country? Who is that must bring about change? Democratic and socialist within our lifetime. Thank you.
Very much for this warm welcome. I hope this is not the first time, but there will also be occasions when I shall needs must come to this place here and have a word with you as I'm having now. And another fortunate thing I noticed is that all these speakers who came here to address you spoke about the most important issues which I also were to touch upon.
Into endiyifumanisileyo apha kuba zonke izithethi eziye zathi ukuxabe ukuthetha apha ndifumanisa zonke zihamba zithi gqolo phaya kwenye zendawo nam kwezinye zendawo nam ebendizimisele into yokuba ndawuthetha ngazo.
All that is left for me to do now is to underline some of the things they spoke about.
Oko nje kushiyekileyo kum ukuba nje ibe nokukhwela umgca phantsi kwezo ndawo bathe bazibiza.
And the first is about the struggle. The Pan-Africanist Congress sees the struggle as clear as daylight.
Okokuqala is into yestruggle yomzabalazo. Umbutho uqoqo ubona istruggle, ubona umzabalazo ngendlela apha ngathi kuyo kukhanyiselwe yona wodwa.
Struggle is about the land, as it has been said before. We lived here happily before the arrival of the white people in 1652. They took the land away from us and now we want it. That is what the struggle is about.
Umzabalazo ke ngokwamehlo ale organization umzabalazo wokufumana umhlaba. Njengoko phambi ko-1652 besihleli kamnandi singaphazamiseki. Kodwa emva koko kona-1652 kwenzeka ukuba sicinezelewe nantso ke into esizabalazayo ukufumana umhlaba.
We, the members of the Pan-Africanist Congress, interpret the struggle as the repossession of the land of which you have been robbed by the foreigners.
Thina singamalungu alombutho kaPhoqo sisithatha umzabalazo siwujonge njengoba ngumzabalazo ukuba thina sifumane umhlaba wethu ubuyele ezandleni zethu njengoba namhlanje sihleli ngaphandle komhlaba usezandleni zamabhulu.
Now many tactics have been used by the oppressors themselves, by the dispossessors, to dissuade us from this course.
Zininzi indlela ezithe zasetyenziswa ukugaba bawuxuthi bomhlaba bezama ukuba silahle amehlo ethu kule nto ingundoqo ingumhlaba.
One of the tactics mentioned here is the encouragement of black-on-black violence by the oppressors.
Enye yendlela abathe benza ngayo ndingathi yilaa nto bathi ezincwadini yimfekane ukulwa kwabamnyama bodwa.
Now what I want to underline in this respect is that we know who our enemy is. He stands right there in front of us. And yet instead of facing the enemy, we face each other and destroy each other.
Into endifuna ukuyixelela umgca apha yeyokuba noxa nje siyazi nje enemy yethu siyibona ime phaya icacile kodwa into esawulibala yiyo ukuba sileqe abanye baonyana besizwe sibulalane basodwa.
I want to remind you of the sons and daughters of Africa that it is the enemy, it is the usurper of your land that you must concentrate on, not your brother and your sister here.
Ndifuna unikhumbuza nje kancinci nabonyana besizwe into yokuba umntu eninothi nigxininise kuyo ngulowo unixuthele umhlaba, ningabe nigxininisa kunye kabanye oonyana besizwe abacinezelweyo nabo.
When we were arrested in 1963, that was the question, the land question. Sasifuna umhlaba wethu.
Mhla sabanjwa ngo-1963, eyona nto sasibanjelwa yayikwayile nto namhlanje ndithetha ngayo, umhlaba.
That is another tactic of the usurper to dissuade you away from the cause.
Lena ke ikwayenye indlela ethi lo mthathi mhlaba azame ngayo into yokuba wena ulibale ngale nto yona uyifunayo ngomhlaba.
Thousands and thousands of African people are thrown into jail daily.
Amawakawaka abantwana besizwe saseAfrika bafakwa kwezaa ntilongo zimnyama imihla nezolo.
That is a form of intimidation. The oppressor hopes that by using such tactics, eventually you will bow down on their knees before them and beg for mercy.
Leyo ke iyenye indlela yokwenza umuntu abe lixutyuse, umoyikisa ukuba ade abuye ibe nguye oguqa ngedolo ekucenga.
Another tactic the oppressor uses is that of keeping you in starvation all the time.
Enye indlela athi umcinezeli ayenze ukuba akubethe ngekakhetsekile imihla nezolo.
Now, if a person has been hungry for a long time, and somebody comes, and in this case it is the oppressor, and offers you a little crumb of bread, you will accept that happily.
Uyabona ke umuntu lo uthi xa udala elambile elikhembeke, kuthi kwawufika noba ufika nabanina esiza naloo ngqweqwe ukuba noko akahlafune, kube lula ukuba lo mntu asuke ayithathe loo nto ngenxa yokulamba.
Today we find ourselves in a situation where a portion of the oppressed population here have been filled with so much money in their stomachs that they are ready to do anything which the oppressor bids them to do.
Namhlanje sibona abaninzi babantwana besizwe abacinezelweyo begcwalise izisu zabo ngemali ezinkulu abazifumana kwabangxowankulu bacinezeli, bezimisele ukwenza nantoni na afuna umcinezeli ngxowankulu ayenze, koko nje ezawuphumelelisa ezo ngxowankulu iimfuno zikangxowankulu naye hluthe esiswini kwexesha.
For 500 rand, one African may toss a grenade through the window of another African. For 500 rands, one African is forced to toss a hand grenade into the house of another African.
Ngoku ufumana nje amakhulu amahlanu erandi, uyakwazi omnye unyana wesizwe anikwe isiqhushumbisi sigcayiseli ukuba asiphose ngefestire komnye umzi womnye unyana wesizwe osemzabalazweni naye nje ukuba afumane la 500 rand.
For 500 rand, an African may go and report another African at the police station, and the poor African is arrested and sentenced to many years in prison only for this 500 rands. Some of you will remember what Robert Mangaliso Sobuke said.
Abanye benu bawukhumbula into eyathethwa inkokheli uMangaliso Sobukwe.
He was speaking about this when he gave an example, an illustration of a jackal and a dog.
Wayesithetha ngale nto mhla wanika umzekelo wenja nodyakalashe.
You know the story, I need not repeat it, but what I shall repeat and stress here is that the jackal, hungry and lean as it was not tempted to do as the dog was doing, to be chained and be given food. The jackal said to the dog, I had rather live in poverty in my jungle than to be chained and be fed as you are. And it dates as far back as 1912. Repressed because of the actions we took against the status quo.
Ngoko sasicinezekile sicinezelwa ngakumbi ngenxa yezinto esasizi sifuna ngoko kulo rhulumente.
Today, because of this experience, we feel matured to tackle the problem in other ways.
Namhlanje ngenxa yento yoba noko sizibona singathi noko sibadalana ngoku kangangento yoba ke ngoku asiboni kuyingxaki ukumalunga nokulungisa le ngxaki khona xa silungisa ngokwethu.
But are we really matured?
Kodwa umbuzo ngaba siqinisekile na?
If one can say, let us go to the round table and discuss the fate of our land here, I don't know if that can be termed maturity. These things have been touched upon, but I would like to wish to stress certain points which I felt were not sufficiently stressed to the oppressed.
Xa kuthethwa ke nge-negotiation ngothethwathethwano kwezopolitiko ke thina sibona ikunikezela kwamalungelwanyana athile kwabacinezelweyo abathile.
Now, these concessions may be given. It doesn't matter how many there may be, but there is only one that can never be granted, and that is the eventual taking over of this land. If that concession is given, then it would mean that during or in the next election, the government of this land will be in the hands of the oppressed and the usurped.
Nokuba zininzi kangakanani maninzi kangakanani ke la malungelwana kodwa uyawufumanisa into yokuba awasoze kuphakathi kwawo kubekho eli lingundoqo wokuba kunikezelwe ngalo mhlaba nokuphatha lo mhlaba waseAfrika weAzania. Koko uba inokwenzeka kweloo nto ingathetha ukuthi ulonyulo lulandelayo ulongamelo nophatho lwalo mhlaba waseAzania lungasezandleni zabantwana baseAzania.
The oppressor himself has told you that this question is non-negotiable.
Abacinezeli ngokunokwabo phofu baye baxelela into yokuba xa kufikelelwa kule ndawo izombuso yona leyo ayifuni uthethwathethwana.
They have over and over again said, dit sal oor my lewenlose liggaam gebeur.
And
I would like to underline this then. You will never negotiate until you reach the point where your oppressor may give you your land back.
And ndixaninise apho ukuba awusoze uye kuthethathethwano uba ulwela inkululeko ngaphandle kokuba abe umcinezeli nomquthi mhlaba wakho uyeza agobe ngedolo azise umhlaba wakho kuwe.
Question of negotiation involves statuses. If you are occupying a higher status and another is occupying a status, there cannot be negotiation between the two.
Ukuthethwathethwano kuwena kuye kufa kube nobungangamhlana bukhona phakathi kuwo ukuba omnye uphaya phezulwana omnye sezantsi bahlala abo bantu bababini uthiwa bayathethathethana awusoze ufike kukho uthethwathethwano apho kuba kaloku kwakokulingana.
There cannot be cooperation between the weak and the strong, and if there is any such cooperation, then it is a misnomer to say that it is cooperation, for collaboration underlined.
Ityala impixampixano nokungaqondi phakathi koluntu oleyo ke imfundo.
When I mention these points, as I do, I want to point out one important fact, and that is the fact that in all these contentious points, the African view has been proved to be the correct one. I challenge anyone who does not agree with the score. Education now, liberation now, education tomorrow. Liberation now, education tomorrow. In order to prosecute the struggle for liberation, you should be enlightened to start with.
umzabalazo kufuneka sisebenzile ngokusengqondweni.
All right, what was the purpose for the step our children took recently against Bantu education?
Into injongo yoba abafundi bathathe la manyathelo bewathathile bebisana nale mfundo kuthiwa yiBantu education.
We all know the reason. The reason was that the education they were giving our children was an education of enslavement. Where did you say when he introduced us, saying that the African child must stop from aspiring, from looking into the glitterings of the white person and aspire to them. The education the child black child to be given is that which will enable him to perform certain skills, certain labors, not to be educated as much as the master himself is. In order to identify certain articles, like if he is sent to go and take a spade, he must not come with a spoon. If he is instructed to slaughter an ox, he must not slaughter a sheep, and so on. That's the education the black child was there in block letters. But I say to you, you must have something in your hand in order to achieve what you want to achieve.